Tom Cruise over Brendan Fraser. Really? Yep, this is my review of The Mummy 2017. So, yeah, we obviously know the history behind the Mummy series. It was started out as a black and white horror franchise, you know, the classic horrors like Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein, all the Universal classics, and as you know, they've also been through a couple of remakes and reboots, which pretty much have bombed over the years. So I don't think I have to give further introduction on those, or the declining history of the Mummy franchise, you know, the Indiana Jones adventure type, which I did enjoy. The first one was really good, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. The second one was almost as good, a little more confusing and a little bit longer, but did have a lot of action to make up for a confusing plot, but had the original stars back, and as well as a son that you probably were hinted with at the end of the first one, so continued the story pretty well, even though some of the effects on the Scorpion King were not exactly the greatest. And speaking of Scorpion King, yes, you got not one, not two, but 3 movies. They were pretty mediocre and forgettable. And then eventually came The Mummy 3, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, which, even though there was the ride, Revenge of the Mummy, which both the Hollywood and Florida versions were different. The Florida version, as you know, replaced Confrontation, and the Hollywood version replaced E.T. Adventure. Well, I have to say I prefer, obviously, the Orlando version. Just watch my Hollywood Attractions review on that, and the Orlando one, which I prefer the Orlando one because it's more intense and more fun. So, and yeah, as I kept getting back to the films, The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor was not very well received, and I couldn't agree more. It had a ridiculously convoluting plot, the CG effects were worse, and without Rachel Weisz, instead Maria Bello taking place as the wife this time around, even though Brendan Fraser was in this as the lead role, his son was older, it just didn't amount to very much. I mean, Jet Li as the Dragon Emperor, I mean, why the hell is this in China now? And yes, they did hint a 4th movie coming at the end, if you saw it, spoiler alert there, but after years of development hell, it eventually got cancelled, and instead, this is what we ended up with, a reboot starring Tom Cruise, and I couldn't believe that I actually anticipated this, because, let me just say, yeah, it was getting nothing but negative reactions to mostly, well, mediocre reactions, and I couldn't agree more. It's not so great. So, yeah, first of all, Tom Cruise. He's been through hit-or-miss movies over the years, and the Scientology criticism and everything, so I'll keep that to a minimum. And his character is okay. Way too quirky, not very interested. Most of the time, I didn't find myself interested in the plot at all. Some of the effects were okay. The war scene at the beginning and the scene where they're digging up the grave and everything seemed okay. You know, it was like something out of an Indiana Jones-like adventure film. But then it just goes in weird directions. I didn't find myself fascinated with what was going on. I have nothing against the fact that this time it's a female, mummy this time, not a male mummy. Her backstory is pretty okay. I found myself a little interested in it. It's kind of similar with Emotap and everything, but this time she wants to rule for evil and use Tom Cruise's character, and then you got Annabelle Wallis, who seems kind of a bit of an awkward love interest at the same time, but I don't feel the chemistry between them. A little bit, maybe, at some parts, but then there's the plane crash, and then just all these other scenes that just seem to come out of nowhere. I mean, then there's all these parts that he keeps seeing her and, the mummy character and all these visions he keeps having. It seems right on par with that, all those hallucinations from that horror film Bye Bye Man that came out much earlier this year. Yeah, trust me, don't even watch that movie either. That's another crappy horror film that came out earlier this year, but that's what it feels like. And again, I just didn't find myself that interested. Even for nearly a 2-hour runtime, it just didn't really appeal to me very much. There's too much darkness, too much going on, too much quirky acting that just didn't feel right. And it just didn't seem like the actors were very interested in this. I mean, this is the start of obviously a new franchise, which I have a feeling is not really going very far, because so far it didn't make very much money to my knowledge. So, not going to spoil too much, but you might want to go see it. Well, if you haven't watched Wonder Woman yet, you're probably better off going to see that one. I mean, if you haven't, then just watch my review on that. I can't say much more of how much I suggest that movie. That explains why that film has 2 straight weeks of successful being #1 at the box office over this film. I mean, Christ, do I have to say much more there? Hell, he even got Russell Crowe in this film, and even his character was strange and weird. Why they threw him as Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in this, I have no idea. It just seems out of nowhere. And honestly, I can't say much more. sorry Universal, you did a pretty mediocre to pretty lousy job trying to, reboot something that just pretty much should have been left alone. Just like the Mummy should have. I mean, really. What the hell were they thinking? I mean, so, you can judge it all you want to, people, but I'd say, yep, pretty much the end should have been the end. Death is just not the beginning. As I said, the end should be the end. So, my final verdict is Wii Remote, Wii Motion Plus down, and, well, just a plain Wii Remote up. I give it a little bit of respect, but not a whole lot. So, till next time, keep watching.